Hi, I'm KS Garner, and you're listening to the Solo Nerdbird podcast. Today, I'll be speaking with the creator and illustrator of the comic Deadbeats and Miscreants Volume 1, Rich Wilsicki. Welcome, Rich.
Thanks for having me, Kayla.
Well, yeah, thank you for joining us. But outside of my introduction, who is Rich Wilsicki and what are you about?
I started as a filmmaker. It's in my 20s with a bunch of friends. We did a bunch of like short films for competition or web series and things like that. And we had some moderate success with it, but it just kind of, after a while, the group split up, like everyone does, and everyone went to their separate directions. And I just continued illustrating, which was something I did all through my childhood. Like I did cartooning when I was little, studied fine arts as like that was like instead of sports or anything. I went to this after school program that taught you painting and sculpting and like charcoal drawing and life drawing. And then it just continued. Like I grew up reading a million comic books, so I started drawing like fan art and things, and it was always kind of just like my special little project. And then maybe like 10 years ago, I started just doing it randomly out in public and for some uh, day jobs I was working for, like just doing advertising or just kind of trying to squeeze my way into there. Like kind of making myself known as someone who can draw, just so I could possibly get jobs doing it.
Uh-huh.
And and then a few years ago, I just started taking it a lot more serious, and that kind of took over. Like I was just doing freelance illustrations, and it was less and less film work. I mean, all of the different job markets and that kind of decided a lot of those things for me. But yeah, it's been great. Like I've gotten to build all this. I feel like I'm not talking about myself at all. I'm just talking about like what I do. I feel like that's also become like this. It's like illustration was always like my personal little thing.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like I find sometimes like doing it for a living, it's hard to separate what is me versus what is work.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I get that a lot. So apologies if I'm ranting in that direction.
No, that's fine. And as you're talking about it, I had a similar upbringing, or I guess learning about the visual arts and things like sculpting and painting. We had the PAL Center that we have is like police academy something. It's just something that I guess the police or whatever created for us to have after school instead of like going to daycare or after school care. We went to there instead. It's like in the neighborhood,
Yeah,
and I mean, I played the sports and whatever programs that they had there, but they also started introducing like chess and like computer stuff, like computer programming stuff and sculpting, which got me into doing that. Like I learned how to do that stuff before high school, before even college. So I kind of
nice.
was like a little bit ahead of the curve. And it's crazy how a passion eventually becomes a career path. Like it's something that you dabble into and you even dream of wanting to do it as a career, but you don't know how to get there in a way. So you kind of just dipping in and out of it throughout life. Like you said, like for 10 years later, you kind of sort of finally took it seriously because I feel like now I don't know why it takes so long a lot of the times, but it takes so long to finally get the hang of something and finally feel more confident in your work. And that's what it sounds like. It sounds like you started becoming more and more confident in your illustration as you veered away from the filmmaking. So that's just
Oh
something
yeah.
I identify with as well with you.
No, yeah. It's like it's. I feel like the projection of success out there is just like, oh, you just immediately get it right. Oh, you're done with college or whatever, then you're the best you're ever going to be. And if you don't make it by the time you're like 27, then you failed. And
Mhm.
everyone has their own pace. It took me a long time to learn all of these things, but it's like, yeah, you can't just hold yourself. It's whatever standard works for you. It's where you're going to be where you need to be to get what you need done. And no matter how long that takes, like you'll get to that point. It's like I feel like only in the last 2 years I've kind of accepted myself as like, oh no, I'm actually good at this. It's like I've been doing it for years, but I'm like my worst critic.
Uh-huh.
It's like everything could be better or it doesn't look as good as this person stuff, or that person stuff. It's like, I was obsessed with Marcos Martin for a while, and I was just like, why does my stuff not look like his? It's like, because that's the way he draws. And he draws like this, he's got this amazing style and this amazing way of showing motion. It's like, I shouldn't be projecting myself to be him. I should just be like my own version of that. Like, what is it that I'm good? How can I lean on my strengths and get confidence from that? And it takes like, I mean, there's a lot of that, I think, in Deadbeats, because just like these characters have like aged. They're not like the typical age for this kind of story. Mm-hmm. So I feel like there's a lot of humor and relation to that, where it's like they're all past this certain prime, but now it's like just this little dead zone of like they should probably be more successful in their lives, or some people should think that they should be somewhere else, or like just like having retirement or any of that, or just the regular things that come with like adulting. And just because they're not there, it doesn't mean they're not still in a good place, or that they're not intelligent people, or that maybe like this is just what helped them get to where they need to go. It's it's just it's about just aging into being like kind of your best self, I guess, or like just learning how to become more mature, or learning how to be comfortable with yourself.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Deadbeats. What is Deadbeats and Miscreants Volume 1 about?
It's about a bunch of comic store clerks. There's a lot of like, I've had a lot of day jobs and a lot of like random retail work. So it's weird little stories like that where I'm kind of just completely exaggerating tales from life, but putting just like a big comedic and fantasy spin on it. Like big influences for me were like Scott Pilgrim, obviously, because there's a lot of like the kind of, romantic young love thing, but this is between people who are in their 30s and not their 20s anymore, so there's a completely different view on it. It's just more jaded, and it's more like these people are a little more beaten down, and how do they like, so it's taking the piss out of a lot of these scenarios. And so you have that person, Kelly, who is kind of doing like the boy named Sue approach there, where it's just like, he just kind of runs with that. And he's just this grumpy, like aimless thing, finds a magical object that gives him just almost like Green Lantern-esque powers. He can just construct things from nothing. And the problem is, you're then stuck with all that stuff. It's not like a lantern construct that disappears. It's like whatever you create is there, it's yours. It's now like, is it a problem? Is it like an aid or something you can constantly use? So then it has to become something about like, there's a responsibility element to it, but also there's people coming in to take that, like to seek that from them. It's these like kind of more cool kids, or like entitled characters that really just want power, and they want to be on top at all times, and he's got to have to kind of bump up against these guys. That was
it kind of sounds like, I guess, maybe in the form of collectors, because they're clerks, so they come comics clerks. So people come in as under the guise of a collector,
Absolutely, yeah. Okay. It's like it's almost like in the first issue, it's essentially that. Like you have there's a scenario where one customer comes in looking for a comic, they don't have it, and then he comes in immediately after that, like, I need this item. It's like this thing that I've heard about that should be like everything, or all the clues pointed me here. So I know it's here, give it to me. And Kelly's just like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And then by chance, he ends up finding it. And then now it's like this kind of like, it's become the MacGuffin of the story, where everyone's looking for this thing. And, how do you hold on to it? How do you use it? Is it a thread? Is it a plus? And how does it change everyone's life involved in it?
Okay, cool. Well, can you elaborate on your creative process for Deadbeats and Miscreants, from just a thought in your head to now promoting it on Kickstarter?
Yeah, sure. it was back when I was really trying to see if I could make comics. I would just start character designing. I would just think of a scenario. Like, I think at some point this started off as like a future sci-fi thing, but it was just more of like the love story elements or a little bit of the fantasy elements. And then the more characters I developed, I just started, okay, they're more modern. They kind of look like me and my friends. And let's take it out of the future. Let's put it in modern New York. You know, it's not exactly reality, but it's just this hyper kind of Looney Tunes, like Douglas Adams, kind of like just off kilter perspective. And then the more I drew them, the more I was like, all right, what are these personalities like? What music do these people listen to? What is their general attitude like towards confrontation or each other? And soon it just kind of built into, like, the story started building itself and coming together. And just little pieces and scenes is all I would write, just making notes in my phone and eventually just threading them together. And then a few years ago, I just sat down and said, hey, I got this writing software. Let me see if I can make it into a real book. Like, does it have a structure that I could make into, say, like a limited run series, or does it work, you know, on a 20 page to 20 page story way? And then also can thread it into like a collected volume, and it all still makes sense. It's not just random ideas thrown into like a pot and then, you know, whatever comes from it. But so I sat down, wrote it, and just flat out wrote 2 issues and was feeling really good about it. And then, you know, life gets in the way and you focus on other things. And I just sat with those 2 scripts, like trimming them down, writing them all over again, just really kind of putting myself through the process of getting it as tight as I could. And then what was it? Oh God, it's like a year and a half ago now. I'm sitting at Anyone Comics, which is up the street from me in Crown Heights. And the guy who runs the place, Demetrius, I'm telling him this story. And he's like, you've been talking about this for months now. Like, you have a script. You're an illustrator. You should actually draw this. You're like the most backwards illustrator I've ever met. They always like draw things first and then write the connective tissue. He's like, just sit down and do it. You're just like, you know, procrastinating. And essentially I was. So I just, you know, the pandemic was coming around. My job had basically been wiped off the earth, and I decided, all right, well, now's the time. You know, if I'm going to do it and it's going to happen, then like I was just afforded, you know, this amount of time that because of the stimuluses and everything, it's like, okay, I can use that and I can coast through this and act like that's my paycheck. You know, I'm paying, like you mentioned, I have to pay it back, obviously, but I'll just account like that. And if I can get this done in X amount of time, then boom, I got a book, and then I can roll with the series. And then I just did it. I sat down with my iPad. I draw the whole book in Procreate, and just like went to town. I just started building folders, boarding everything out. You know, like everything starts out so rudimentary. It's just however basic the boxes can be that still show the actions for each panel. And then as soon as everything lines up and the page looks like it's, you know, at least pleasant to look at and not just a sloppy mess, and it flows right, then just keep going over. So I would lay out the entire book and then start laying it like getting more detailed. And by the third pass, it's like adding gray tones. Then I'm adding the all the onomatopoeias and word balloons. And then like I kind of put myself in this like after work regime where, you know, it's just like you have 4 hours a day to sit down and do this book, and then just get it done as fast as you can with like learning, you know, it's like every comic is different. So you learn the shortcuts that work for that book and try and spend your time accurately, but also, you know, make sure there's a quality book there, that I'm not just cutting too many corners. And like I can be a perfectionist, and it's that battle of, I'm sure like every creative knows this, where it's like you're you have to really measure your time versus what you can afford to put into something, because it's just, it's rough. It's rough having to kind of create your own job and then sell it, but also make a living at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, so what did you find easier? I mean, easier wouldn't be the right word, but I guess from illustrating it after the fact and writing it beforehand, I mean, obviously there's going to be something where you have to change certain things for it to match up well. But which aspect did you find easier? Did you find drafting the script easier, and then you did the illustrating, or did you think, oh man, I should have did the illustration first before I scripted out?
Yeah, I definitely, I'll always lean on illustration. Like it's I mean, I draw every day. It was my hobby for the longest time. Like anytime I'm on a train, I have the sketch pad out. Anytime I'm like just sitting around for 2 seconds, I'm drawing something. It's just like, it's like a nervous habit. So if I'm feeling like I need to be productive, the easiest thing for me to do is just pull out my iPad and just sit there and work.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I mean. That's what I love about that so much, is because having worked as an editor and also graphic designer before, I hated being tethered to a computer because it felt like every day was just me sitting inside. And I pretty much grew up as an inside kid, but I've grown to respect sunlight and enjoy it. So like sitting like by a window, looking at a nice sunny day, I'm just like, shit, I should get out there. Like I should be like, there's got to be some way to untether myself. And like just the way that the Apple Pencil, how sensitive that's become, how advanced Procreate's become, it just makes it so much easier to never really be hunkered down to a computer. Like I can just go out and sit in the park if I wanted to, or at a coffee spot, and work. So it's really, that is definitely the easiest for me. And sometimes when I need to work on like story things, or even do some writing or promoting, I catch myself stalling with illustration. Like I will just be like, oh no, but I need to do this like sticker design, or this page needs some more grays. And I will waste, like, it's still being productive. It's like you almost kind of, you're switching the wrong priorities. It's just like, I'll do this one because it makes me the most joyous and it brings me the most pleasure. And then the other stuff, that'll get done later. I don't have to worry about that right now.
Yeah, it's nice to hear your process, because I have a similar process with my writing. I never heard of someone say it's like a nervous thing that you do, because I never thought of it that way, because I actually do the same thing. When I'm somewhere I kind of don't want to be, I start writing. And that's like, I can't write at home. I'll write if I'm at a party and I want to go home, but I didn't drive, so I have to wait for my driver to be ready. Or if I'm at work and I'm sitting at my desk and I don't want to be working and I don't have anything to do, I'll start writing on some sticky notes. That's how I started drafting my first novel, is writing on the sticky notes or on my phone in my notes. And a lot of people are like, oh, you drafting your notes? I'm like, yeah, that's just the easiest thing I have right there in front of me. I remember I was at a football game, at a Ravens game, and I had my iPad and I was writing because I didn't want to be there anymore. It was like halftime and I didn't want to be at the game anymore. I was like, they're losing. I don't want to be here anymore. But I didn't drive, so I had to wait. And I'm just writing on my iPad looking crazy. So yeah, I write like that too. And my characters kind of just tell me who they are in a way. Like you said, like what kind of music did they listen to, or how do they deal with confrontation? How do they interact with each other? And that just kind of tells you who they are as people. You may not have an idea what they look like as of yet or anything like that, but who they are as people, they kind of tell you from the music they listen to, or how they travel to work that day. Do they walk? Do they take public transit? Do they have a car? Do they bicycle? That kind of tells you who they are physically as well, and what they can handle, what they can't handle. So it's nice to hear that we have similar creative processes, because I feel like when I tell people how I do my stuff, they kind of look at me like I'm strange. I'm like, this is how I work. So it's nice to hear from someone else, finally, from someone else.
No, it's like, yeah, I've never heard anyone say that with writing. It's just like, so that is like, same. It's very comforting. Just be like, oh yeah, you just gotta, it has to come out. Like it just has to, like, in any form that it can. I draw on sticky notes all the time. It's just like, now I make sure I take a picture of them So what I do is I just throw the sticky note away. So it's not something I have to worry about and like organize later. I'm just like, nope, I got it on here. I can put that somewhere, or even just like send it to my iPad and just draw right over it.
Yeah,
It's like so handy.
That's exactly what I used to do. I used to take a picture. I just take a picture of it, or if I try to write on the back of it, or put two of them together, so I know that it's supposed to go together when I finally write it, type it down on the computer.
Right.
Well, how has your experience been searching for collaborators, and how did you find your letterer, Nick Philpott? Like, how did you know he was right for this project?
Well, Nick and I are old friends from Forbidden Planet. I worked there for about 3.5, almost 4 years, and with a whole bunch of people who are now working in comics, like to a degree where it's pretty crazy. But yeah, Nick was a friend I met there, and we would hang out every once in a while. And one day we just met up. Like I think it was maybe even a year after I stopped working there. We just said, hey, we haven't seen each other in a while. We sat down, like figured out how you doing? How's life been? Are you still working at the Planet? And he let slide that he was just like, oh yeah, I'm trying to become a letterer now. Like I know he was doing other things, and he went to school for, I think, I'm not sure. I don't want to get it wrong, but like more in like to a kind of like medical or nursing degree. And but like lettering was his passion, coloring. He wanted to work in comics. You know, it's the whole reason that he was at the Planet as well. So I just said, all right, like I'll just like kind of store that little nugget away for later. And years went by. I worked with a few different collaborators on different projects. Like my first comic book was actually like right as I was leaving the Planet. And that guy was someone I met through another worker there, Matt Klein. He had hooked me up with this, said, this guy's looking for an illustrator. I know you're looking for a writer. And this, it was like this old, it was like working on a serial, you know, like it was this little ragtag group of people in like around the 40s, but it was like this, it's almost like Batman the Animated Series, how it looks like the 1930s, but it's like present day in a way.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of like very retro project. And it was fun. It was a bunch of great characters to design, but he was a nightmare to work with. Like, nice guy, but something about the way we collaborated was not working out. And it was just like that job, like just, you know, I went from an illustrator to also being the editor, to the letterer, to the colorist. And I was not making like any more money for doing any of these jobs. Like, scripts were not broken down by panels. I would have to just guess how everything was supposed to flow. And there was a lot of like multiple action per page. You know, it's like panel 1, this guy looks in this direction, but we also see in this direction. It's like, ooh, you can't do that, guy. Like, it's got to be one point of view. Otherwise it's 2 different images. And that just like kind of crumbled apart. I'm still proud of a lot of things that came out of that book, but that was just like, that soured me on collaborating a little bit. And I met some other people who were fantastic to collaborate with. But, you know, it's like, I just kind of, we made some great stuff, and I'm still, you know, knocking on wood for some of that to come out right now. But, you know, it's just like, just saw more of behind the scenes while working with these other people on like how to sell, where you can sell, or just all of the effort it takes to like some of the editors to wrangle, all of the talent. Because one of the projects was an anthology project, and just kind of hearing the behind the scenes mechanics of it that were outside of just the art department. And I just figured, you know what, I can, like, I've been writing Deadbeats, which used to go have a different title for so long, that I should just jump on this. Like, now I know, like, I can handle X amount of page counts per week from doing all of these different books, and I can really make a go at it. So as soon as I was, you know, just all my knowledge of like doing all of the work on that first book, and then only doing the art and seeing like, okay, this is basically my strong point. I'm not a good letterer. I'm still, I'm getting better as a colorist. It's my one thing that I think I really still struggle with because I'm just too indecisive on it right now. But I was like, okay, so I need someone to carry this weight for me because it's going to take me forever to do it, and it's not going to be like what I needed. And I asked Nick. I sat down. We sat down at a bar, just had a drink, and talked it over. And he was like, "Yeah, I could do that. I'd love to do that." The second we got home, I had like 3 different fonts that he sent me. It's just like he's already thinking way beyond where my brain was with it, and where it can go to look way more official than I would have been able to make it. Like I think you can see in some of the examples in the Lucy's, like me doing my own word bubbles, it's chaos. It's all over the place. And he gave it this like official uniformity. Uniformity? Yeah, I think so. That's a word. Yeah, I tend to like just mash words together and make my own and think it's English. But yeah, like he just gave it a much cleaner, better, professional look. And he's just a great guy. So it's great having him around. It's great hearing what he has to say about it. Like I love hearing critiques like from anything I give to people. So he was like, oh, like I like how this joke lands, or like, oh, this one could be like, this could be more clear. And that's the biggest thing I love about collaborations, is just like knocking heads back and forth. And he's a guy that will go the extra mile for that. Like, he will give you his thoughts if you ask for them. And he's got good thoughts. He's got good brains on his head.
Well, with everything that you've learned so far, from learning your own art style to, collaborating with other people and knowing it didn't work out, but then you finding someone that it did work out and it's working out perfectly, to even learning your own creative process that works for you. What advice could you offer to other artists you wish someone would have told you when you first started?
Well, definitely, just to be kind to yourself, because my whole like, I always wanted to be like, I pushed myself to be like other people for a very long time. And if I wasn't on that same caliber, then I was upset with myself, or I would just like, part of the nervousness of constantly drawing is just thinking to myself, this isn't good enough. It needs to be better. So I need to do it again and again until it's good. And then what I kind of lost was any sense of myself in the things I was doing. It's just like I was trying to be like so many different other people that I was like, I had no style. I had no personality, or my drawings didn't. My work was very bland. And if I had like just kind of spun around my story to be like, all right, let me figure out what my strengths are and lean on those, instead of trying to bend what makes me different into a certain category, or into a certain style, like just kind of, yeah, it's like you're restructuring your brain and giving yourself so many more problems. And then also on top of that, not being nice about any step in the process, just like, being completely mean to yourself, and it's not helping anything. You're just stagnating because you're not where you want to be, but it's probably not where you need to be. It took a while to realize that those were 2 different things, like that I needed to be nicer to myself and more accepting of what separated me from other people, or what even was like what made me happy. It took me a while to figure that out. So definitely, if there was some advice to give people, it's be kind to yourself, because like most people probably aren't gonna. It's a hard industry, especially working in the arts, because there's so many options. There's so many people out there. Sometimes it's really easy to not take yourself serious, or to just like, yeah, just to be mean to yourself if things aren't going exactly the way you think they should be going. Because, like, it's the thing about life. Life is chaos. Nothing's going to go exactly as planned. Everything's going to change. Like even if you try to follow somebody on like how did they get into the industry, or how are they doing the thing they want to do, as soon as they do it, that door is closed behind them. There's no, you can't copy someone's path. You have to carve and make your own.
Yeah, I think a lot of, I guess, being hard on yourself, being mean to yourself, being unkind to yourself, I think a lot of that has to do with not making any money, especially like if you come straight out of college, you have a degree, and it takes a while before you can start actually making money pretty much in any field as soon as you get out of college, but especially as an artist, as a visual artist or whatever it may be. So yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with it, and if you're not making money, you're kind of considered like a failure, especially if like by 30, or we talked about it earlier in the interview. If you're not successful by 27, you've failed or whatever it may be, or you're not successful. So I think a lot of that has to do with the fact if you're like not making money, then is it really worth it, or is your art style, creative process, whatever it may be, is it as good as you think it is in a way? And then again, we talked about before that is finding your own path and pacing yourself and what works for you. And it takes a long time to kind of figure that out. Like I'm 30 and I'm just figuring out now that what actually works for me and not what I was taught what was supposed to work for me in a way. So that kind of goes into my last question. And again, we already kind of spoke about it earlier in the interview. But Rich, what is your idea of success? And I ask that because as creators, again, if we're not getting regular paychecks from a full-time job or making consistent revenue, we're considered failures. Many of us will put our dreams and projects on the back burner or give them up altogether because this career can be, as you mentioned, highly competitive and highly intimidating. So what is your idea of quote unquote success?
It used to be like when I graduated college and I was looking for a career in film, I was like, I want to be a director. I want to be like, big blockbuster director guy. Like, my idol was Steven Spielberg, like just about everyone of my generation. And then it was, as reality came in, it was just like, you learn things that you like and things that you don't like. And now it's at that point where I think a lot of the things I thought I wanted, I would have hated. I would have absolutely hated to be like I don't want to be famous. I just want to be good at my job, and I want to make a living at it. So that to me that's where I want to be. I want to I still got the film bug, but I discovered maybe that's just like my hobby. Like I want to make a living illustrating and doing this. And, it's why I'm doing the Kickstarter. It's why I'm really trying to take this as seriously as I can and make it a, real job that can pay for me to do it and do it consistently and keep quality to it. But, I don't want anyone waiting years between books, because I started this as a single issue thing. And if it's like I've taken some projects that have kicked back issue 2 significantly. I mean, it's been over a year since the first one. And I feel that's the thing I feel the worst about, was just like, that was me kicking this passion project on the back burner so I could pay for rent, like we all have to, so I could get my stuff out there more. So hopefully I can pitch Deadbeats and then it will I'll have some notoriety behind me or something. But some of those things, they stall. Or they take, they're on their own different time spans, and I can't control that. So if I can control this and make this like my reality, like if I can make enough money with this book, that's my ideal right now. Or at least it doesn't have to be just this book. It could be just illustrating in comics. Right now my focus is comics, and the big hope I have for one day, this the big pipe dream for Deadbeats, is animation. Because I always saw it. I studied animation in college and, just thought it was the perfect mixture of the two things I loved. It's film and it's comics. mix, and especially if you get like, I was obsessed with, when I first thought about this, with that 26 episode anime format, where it's just like, all right, you got a bunch of crazy characters, you have a limited time to tell a story with them, and there's a closed gap. Like there is an end in sight. And it's basically just like 2 seasons of as much quality as you can throw at this, and tell your story and be gone and be done with it. Just like let it free into the world. I never wanted Deadbeats to be a forever story. I do see like, if all my dreams came true tomorrow, it would probably be like a 50 to 60 issue run, and then we move on to the next project. I just hope it has that kind of like, I mean, at least I have enough notes to make it that long. Yeah, I just see it as like, that is my ideal thing right now, to really dedicate my time towards this book, and yeah, to just take myself seriously as I take the book seriously, and just hope it finds its audience. Hope it finds like people who, can relate to it or see themselves in some of the characters, or at least like familiarize themselves with some of the situations. Like, I've been through that. I know what that guy's talking about, or I know what that reference is. Yeah, and just to have fun with it, because it is, though I deal with a lot of different things, in the essence, it's a very fun and silly book. It's like, there's real dumb jokes in it, and hopefully there's real intelligent jokes in it. But yeah, I want it to be fun. It's like, its major influences are definitely from like, from comedy.
Yeah, I can definitely see this going in the direction of animation, and I think you'll get back into filmmaking. It may not have anything to do with Deadbeats. It may be something else, but like we've been talking about it, pacing and taking things a lot more serious. I think a lot of it has to do with really not knowing how to do it, and you may have the information on how to do it, but you don't have the resources to do it, or you may just need access to. I think a lot of it has to do with accessibility type issues, and also obviously money. It's the biggest thing. We had the money, we wouldn't need to worry about accessibility, because we would just pay for the access. But yeah, eventually I do think in time you will get back into filmmaking. It may just end up starting out as animation at first, but from what we've been talking about, it sounds like it is still something. I feel like it's bigger than a hobby to you. I think it sounds like you're kind of downplaying a little bit. It sounds more like you would love to get back into it, and I think you genuinely will somewhere down the line.
No, it's my best friend James and I. James, we collaborated a bunch of. He's a great cameraman and a DP. We wrote or outlined a horror script. That's the first time any of us have ever. Well, I think he's worked on some horror projects before. The first horror script I ever wrote. But it's like we're looking at like a 40-page short to like pitch something bigger, and we're still keeping. We're keeping our. I'm about to butcher an analogy here. We're keeping our hands in it, and so I don't think it's anything that'll ever leave me, but I do think like sometimes I get into that space where you just try and juggle too much at once, and if I like I have a screenplay that's like 85% written, but it's just like, all right, that's a really big thing that I can't handle right now, even if I pitch to somebody. So let's maybe slow down that one. We'll focus on Deadbeats. We'll get Deadbeats rolling, and then like maybe that'll come back around again. But no, it's like you're right. I definitely see it. It's always going to be a part of my life. I love film. One of my day jobs right now, or one of my other gigs, is working in a theater that I love. So it gives you some good fodder for the series, since it's also set in a retail business, but also, I love being around it. I love it being a part of my life to some degree. It's very, no matter what I do, it's as long as that is still a part of me, then I'm going to chase it down however I can.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, is there anything that you wanted to touch on that I may have missed about Deadbeats and Miscreants Volume 1? Maybe discuss rewards for potential backers?
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, like, I'm sure there's a million things that I just completely ranted on when there's a very short way of saying anything. But yeah, it's just I always see Deadbeats as it's a story about regular people, and they're not aspiring to be like celebrities or the best of whatever. They're just trying to live their lives, to the best of their abilities. And it's like a very like, kind of middle class struggle book. That's what I want it to be. I think it's a lot about people who are in power taking advantage of people who at least feel that they have no power, and how they can rebel against that, and rebel against a lot of bureaucracy, or just people who have I guess what is it, the haves, it's like the people who have everything and just want to take more and more, and really in a kind of like Bugs Bunny way, how can they get one up in something? How can these people of I'm going to use quotes here, a lower stature, really like get the victory in that situation? Like what's like something satisfying that I don't see in reality, but again, silly, very very silly. I make it sound like it's a deep drama, but no, it's like it's a very Bugs Bunny thing I'm trying to think of. Like it's like Bugs Bunny fucking with the opera singer. He doesn't like kill the guy or anything like that. It's not hyper violent, but he does like just take a big shit in his cereal, and that's the victory. That's the win. And but also just like I definitely want to make sure that kind of grown up fish out of water part really sinks in. That it's like the longer I was writing, I've been basically writing this for 10 years, in one degree or another. And it almost got funnier the older my main character got. Because, it's like a lot of these are, it's just like some of these situations, like you're too old for that. You're too old to be drinking 6 beers every night, passing out and like missing your alarm in the morning for work. It's like, this is why you're in this situation, or like, you can't like, it's like, yeah, you can smoke weed. You can't smoke weed all the time, guy. Like, you got to chill the fuck out. And it's just like, but not making any of that like this traditional like, oh, like, yeah, but drinking is bad and weed is bad and like or drugs are bad, or it's bad to just be like a kind of goofball sometimes. It's like those are all okay. You just have to be a whole person as well as that. Like you still have to balance a life. You have to you have to function in society in some kind of way. You can't just like disappear and expect to still gain all the rewards or something. But but it's also like kind of that them aging up allowed me to find what their goals are, because they're at this point and they're not where they need to be. All right, what can they do? What knowledge have they acquired that can really help them out? Or what lessons have they gone through that have led them to this point, where it's just like, maybe this is like for some of these characters, there's going to be these breaking points where it's just it finally clicks in their brains that life has to change and I have to be the one to change it, not someone else is going to come change it for me, or this like just by sheer luck or accident I'll get the things I want. It's like, no, now it's time for me to make real decisions and just kind of grab life like by the no. I can think of, that needs another writing pass.
All right. Well, again, I want to thank the creator and illustrator of the comic Deadbeats and Miscreants Volume 1, Rich Wilsicki. I highly recommend our listeners to give the Kickstarter a look, share, and back if they can. All of Rich's socials and website will be listed alongside the Kickstarter link in this episode's details. Again, I am Kaya Skarner, and you've been listening to the Solo Nerdbird podcast. Thank you.